Hi, my name is Terry Westwell and welcome back to Panic at the Book Club. This week we'll be discussing Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. If you'd like to take part in this online book club, you can find out more information on how via the channel's intro video. We'll list the next 4 books down below and on TikTok along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose the best genre that suits you and the best time frame to read it in. We also accept your book feedback in a wide manner of ways. Post your comment below a video, send in a voice note, or even send a short video clip of you discussing the book. Alternatively, you could just send me a direct message on Instagram. Once Upon a Broken Heart is the first book in a series about love, curses, and the lengths that people will go to in order to get their happy ever after. Evangeline Fox was raised in her beloved father's curiosity shop, where she was raised on legends about immortals such as the tragic Prince of Hearts. She knows that his powers are mythic, his kiss is worth dying for, and bargains with him rarely end well. But when Evangeline discovers that the love of her life is about to marry another, Evangeline is desperate enough to offer the Prince of Hearts anything he wants in exchange for his help to stop the wedding. The prince only asks for 3 kisses, but after Evangeline's first promised kiss, she discovers that the Prince of Hearts wants a lot more than she pledged. And he has plans for Evangeline that could lead to the greatest happily ever after, or the most exquisite tragedy. Just your friendly spoiler alert that if you haven't read this book yet, I would suggest going and doing that first, because beyond this point, there will definitely be spoilers. The book was super clear and easy to read, and despite so much going on, despite all of the twists and turns and theories and secrets, it was quite easy to follow. Some of the chapters were wildly inconsistent. I mean, for the most part, they were a really reasonable length, but then you would stumble across like a series of 2 or 3 chapters at a time that were super short. Like at one point, I think there was one chapter that was only like 1 sentence long, and although it made perfect sense at the time in the context, it was still quite amusing. I think the main character, Evangeline, was wonderfully frustrating. Don't get me wrong, there was a lot of character growth, and I am hoping that there's going to be a lot more in the next couple of books. She's the type of character that a little part of me really hates, but at the same time, she is quite lovable. You can see this fierce, rebellious character breaking out from this sickly sweet person who believes in fairy tales and happily ever afters with her one true love. I'm not gonna lie, I don't like this whole marriage to Apollo. She still romanticizes it way too much, and she doesn't even know the guy. The version of the man that she does kind of know doesn't even exist because he was essentially under a love spell at the time. I mean, without that, he might be an arrogant jerk who's just going to make her life miserable. But considering the book is almost about proving fairy tales wrong and unrealistic in this fairy tale world, I'm guessing their marriage isn't really going to go very well. Even if she does manage to wake him up. I also think that no matter how much she hates Jax in the end of this book, she's probably going to forgive him. I think the book intentionally appears quite naive, with quite 2-dimensional characters in the beginning that would be stereotypical of that cheesy fairy tale romantic world. As the book went on, some of the characters showed more complexity, and I have no doubt that that's going to happen more over the next few books, as well as the complexity of the problems that they're facing. So, just a little side note, but I really loved how silly and inconvenient all these little story curses were. I do love that as the book went on, she still kept that hope, but she was no longer that same girl who was praying to the Prince of Hearts over a boy. Also, speaking of which, I really did love how you were never really sure of anything. For example, in the beginning, I had my doubts about Luke, but then as the story went on, I was pretty certain he was just an asshole. But then something different would happen, and I'd be convinced that the stepsister was the evil one. Honestly, I think the book did a very good job of these sorts of twists and turns, and you never really knew what to believe, so the ending was quite surprising. I didn't see it coming, and I have to admit, I need to know what happens next. The book was full of morally grey characters making morally grey decisions, decisions that would seem either good or bad at the time, but later on they wouldn't turn out as you expected. But even those characters that may seem like villains in your stereotypical fairy tale were lovable. Like, I did think that Evangeline and Jax were going to fall in love and it was going to be amazing. I even thought that maybe Evangeline was going to turn out to be Jax's true love. Like, maybe he'd kissed her as a statue and his heart started beating when she was woken up, and that had an effect on his kiss curse rather than it being that other woman. But alas, that did not happen. But I'm not totally unconvinced that we aren't going to get some variation of that story by the end of the third book. I just think that first the book's going to try and prove that even in this world of fairy tales and magic, life isn't actually a fairy tale. You know, there's going to be a ton of ups and downs and addressing whatever the hell is on the other side of that Valerie arch. So, as for the question, would I recommend the book? I was pleasantly surprised by this book and I would absolutely recommend it. However, I would also recommend that you buy the second book because there are parts of this story that just haven't met an ending yet. If you want a book that you can be all serious about, it isn't that. If you want a book that is true romance and beautiful fairy tale with a happily ever after, it isn't that either. But it is a fun and charming and just overall a very pleasant read. I don't mind reading young adult books at all, but I was really surprised at just how much I enjoyed this one. I'll be looking forward to what happens next and where the characters go from here. The stepsister, for one, Evangeline and Jax and Apollo and Luke. Like, will the stepmom ever make a reappearance? And has Evangeline's mum got something to do with this? Also, what is with this arch? There are so many questions, and I am looking forward to finding out the answers. But let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy the book? Next week, we're discussing The Shadow of the Gods, so don't forget to get your comments and thoughts in by Monday, the 15th of January, at the latest, to be a part of the discussion. You can now do this on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram. The following week, we'll be discussing How to Kill Your Family, but don't forget, if you do need a little bit longer to read a book, we do now list the next 4 books down below and on TikTok, along with the discussion dates. That means you can choose the genre that best suits you and the best time frame to read it in. Thank you all for joining, and if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It always means a lot, and I will see you all next week. Bye.